All right, Drew Camp, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast today. Your own podcast called the Epic Dad Podcast.
I do. Yeah. Epic Dad Legacy. Yep.
Okay, Epic Dad Legacy. I saw it's pinned on your Instagram, a reel about how you were kind of out of shape, you're stressed, you had anxiety, depression, and then you were like, you know what, I'm gonna make a change. Walk me through, I guess, that whole process because a reel only has so much context.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I'll kind of have to go back even further. Be honest with you, so I'll just start with my background. So I joined the military right after college, and served for about 4 years, and then went to school, kind of went to work in corporate America, had a couple kids, and then I had two girls to start out with. So I've got two girls now, 8 and 6, and I've got a son now that'll be 3 in March, and that was kind of like the waking up moment for me, which is kind of where you saw that reel, of just the content around like I don't really like the way life is going right now. I need to make a change, and the reason I need to make a change is because I've got this son now that all of a sudden is going to try to grow up to be exactly like me, and it's my responsibility to teach him what a man should be. And when I looked in the mirror, I couldn't answer that question of like, well, what is a man? Right? Like, what is he supposed to be doing? And what is his responsibility? And how should a man act? And so that kind of like started me down this journey of personal development, personal growth. And a lot of that had to do around fitness. But I've never been like a out of shape guy, like by normal standards, I would say. I've always been like pretty decent shape guy, but really the catalyst for me was looking at, yes, one, I don't like how my body looks and feels. But really two was like the way that I was showing up as a husband, as a father, was just not the example of the man that I wanted my son to look at. And so that was a huge kind of look in the mirror moment of, hey, I'm about to have this boy, and I need to be the shining example of what I want him to grow up to be like.
So your whole brand is the Epic Dad, but how had that whole transition impacted your marriage? Because you are married, your husband.
Yeah. I'll say this. I try to be an epic dad. I also try to be an epic husband too. I would say I probably fail at the epic husband more than I do at the epic dad. My wife would probably agree with that too. But no, it's had a big impact on my relationships too. Not just with my kids, but with my wife, as far as trying to show up more intentionally. Not just with my kids, but also with my spouse too, right? And my wife. And big impact there, man. A lot of the kind of personal development work and changes that I've gone through are a lot of that too. Is how do I take that and implement it across all my relationships, not just with my kids.
So with all that growth, where did you realize, I guess in hindsight, you were lacking the most in where it was being a husband and a father? And I guess what was that realization once you were like, man, this was the thing that I've been lacking the most over the years?
Yeah. So I'll kind of take you down a journey. So like I said, I was in the military right out of college, and my wife and I got married right when I joined the military. So we've been married 14 years now, which is crazy to think about.
Nice.
But I joined the military and had a very, very clearly defined purpose, right, and like mission in life in the military. And that was, hey, our job is to close with and destroy the enemy, right? Like that's your mission. And what, politics, all that stuff aside, like that was a very clear mission. Right. And in Afghanistan, so I started in Afghanistan in 2012, had a few moments on that deployment, which, just kind of really caused me to lose that purpose, and really lose that kind of hope and positive mindset. And caused me to go down, not a great path when I got out of the military. From the outside, I looked successful. Like I went back to grad school, got an MBA, working in corporate America, have the house, have the cars, all that kind of stuff. Right. But like at the end of the day, my purpose wasn't clearly defined. And that changed pretty drastically when we had our first kid. I went from kind of being directionless to like, hey, I've got a daughter now, and like that's my job. Like I know my purpose. But yeah, similar to like what happened in Afghanistan is you start out with that purpose, right? And you're very vigilant. Your head's on a swivel, the entire time. You're not complacent at all. There gets to be a time on a deployment like that where you start to become complacent, right? And the things that you probably should be looking out for, um, you're not anymore, right? So for I buried IEDs, all that kind of stuff, right? Like you get to a point, and I hate saying this, but it's the truth. Is like you get to a point where you're like, can I curse on this show? Is that all
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Okay. You get to a point where you're like, I don't fucking care, man. Like if I step on an IED and die or not, like I just don't care. Like you get to that,
Hmm.
and like I never thought I would be there, right? And people that had deployed before me told me that, like that's what's going to happen. I'm like, no way, man. Like I'm super positive. I'll never get that low,
Hmm.
right? But like it legitimately was like I honestly don't care, like if I do or not, if I live or die or not. And that's really painful, man. That's hard. And that's almost where I was at in life, kind of through that transition before my first kid. Was just in a depressed state. Like I said, from the outside looking in, it probably looked very successful, but was bearing a lot of that with all kinds of vices, right? Like drinking, pornography, laziness, like you name it, just depression, anxiety, stress. And when like I said, when my first daughter was born, that fundamentally shifted for sure, and like had the new purpose. But then somewhere along the line, you get complacent as well, right? I think every new dad can tell you that. Like you go into that journey of like, I want to be the best dad ever and the most intentional dad ever, and like always be there. But somewhere along the line, you kind of just fall back into the rhythm, right? And like, although you want to do the best for your kids, you kind of stop showing up, right? You just start going through the motions again. So that's where I was at. And then the big wake up for me again was figuring out that we were gonna have a son, man. I had two girls at the time that I started the company. And when we found out we were having a boy, it was just that second wake up moment for me of like my daughters. I want to try to be the example of the man that they're hopefully going to marry one day.
Hmm.
But there's a lot behind the scenes that I can do that they're not going to see, right? Um, but when we figured out that, hey man, the stick is blue, it's going to be a boy, was just earth shattering to me. Of like, shit, like I don't have my shit together. I need to figure out, one, how to be a man. Two, like what does a man do? What are the behaviors that he has, the values he has, so that I can model that and teach my son that, because I
Hmm.
want my son to go, be a much better man than I am.
Hmm. Yeah. Same. So I guess, what were those? What did that look like to be a man, and the values of a man?
Yeah. So I did a lot of reading, kind of during this journey, before we had our son. And one book that I love and I've kind of adopted as a mantra, is this book by Robert Jordan. I think it's Robert Jordan. I might be wrong on the author, but the name of the book is Raising a Modern Day Knight.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think it's Robert Jordan. And in that book, he talks about exactly that, right? Like looking back to medieval times and princes and squires and knights and things like that. Of like, hey, a boy growing up to be a knight. It's like, what are the values, the principles that we need to teach him along that journey, so that he's ready to step into knighthood. And so that book really resonated with me. And just going back to my personal story, like I had a great dad growing up. Like we have a great relationship. He taught me a lot of the value of hard work. He was an entrepreneur, and so gotten to see a lot of that. But we never really had conversations about that kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
Like this is what a man is. This is what he does. This is how he acts. It was just kind of like assumed. But I think without a solid framework to go off of, it can be confusing. Of like, is this how I should act, right? And is this what a man does? So that book lays it out very clearly, as this is what a man does. And so a man does four things. So a man accepts responsibility, he rejects passivity, he leads courageously, and he expects the higher reward from God after death. So those four things, and so that is what I've kind of anchored my philosophy around manhood on and masculinity on, and those are the things that I try to adopt, and that's what I'm teaching my son, as he starts to grow.
And you're actually the second person who's mentioned that book on my
Really,
podcast. Yeah.
you're kidding? Yeah, it's fantastic, man.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to write down that that's a must for everybody, especially if you're raising young boys.
Yeah, if you're a boy dad, 100%, it is. And then for girl dads too, I've got some mandatory reading as well. We can talk about later. But yeah, there's a wealth of resources out there. I think if you take the time to be intentional to go seek it out.
I only have boys. I have two sons.
Okay.
One just turned 8, and the other one in about like 4 or 5 months he'll be 4.
Okay.
But I like the first pillar that you mentioned was taking responsibility,
Hmm.
because I feel a lot of men think they take responsibility, but when you actually look at their lives, it's they don't take responsibility for almost like anything. Like they don't truly hold themselves accountable or responsible for what goes on in their household.
Hmm.
It's like if your kid gets in trouble at school, is it your fault? No, it's your child's fault, but that child is your responsibility.
Hmm.
Like your wife cheats on you. That's her fault, but it's your responsibility that was allowed in your household.
Hmm.
Essentially, we don't have full control over them because they have free will. They're their own humans. But if we are the head of the household, like we have to be responsible for every single thing that goes on in our household.
Hmm.
And I just love that was pillar number one that you mentioned. Um, because oftentimes we want to like put blame, or we don't want to have to work all day and then come home and still raise our kids. It's like, well, that's what the wife's for. It's like, but you have a son, I have two sons. It's like, so are we gonna claim responsibility when they're 18 years old and everyone's like thinks that kid just doesn't know anything and is useless in the world, like the way that he is presenting the family name.
Hmm.
And it's like we have to take responsibility for that. And I think culturally, we put the responsibility of raising young men on our wives,
Hmm.
and we don't take responsibility for that.
Hmm.
It's like we punch out at 5:30, and our day's done.
Yeah, that's when your day starts, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when you think about it, big picture, right? Uh, at the end of your life, like, what are you going to care about more? You going to care about like your paycheck you brought home, right, and the job
Hmm.
that you did, or are you going to care about like how your freaking kids turned out, man? And like how intentional you were with the time you had with them. So like, yeah, the job's important. We have to provide. Like that's, you have to, as a father, as a husband. That's your job, right? But like that's just one step, and it's probably
Yeah.
it's like that is the foundation. Like, yeah, you do that, but that's not your only job, man. Like your job is to raise your kids and lead your family.
Yeah. And I tell people often the only legacy that you're ever going to leave behind is your name, which is your children.
Mm.
Yes, there's going to be that person who has a building named after them, but they're the anomaly, they're the exception of the exception. Michael Jordan, his legacy is going to be what he did as an individual, but 99.9% of all of us, our legacy is going to be our children and their children and
Mm.
how they carry themselves in our name. Like, I try and stress to my kids our last name and how it is that we carry ourselves so much. One, my grandfather, who technically adopted my biological dad, he came over here on a boat.
Mm.
Like, he was an immigrant just that many generations ago, and I'm the only male, even from down from him, that still has our last name. So I'm like, we get like the best start, because it's like we don't have to compete with our other distant siblings that have our same last name.
Mm.
It's like, that I don't tell them that, but in my mind, I'm like, I got the best slate. There's me. I have no brothers. Uncles had no sons. My grandfather had no brothers. He was the only one who came from the country he came from with the last name. And it's like, so especially in my town, it was like when I had girl cousins with my last name, and if they were on the news or something, people would be calling me thinking it was my sister. And now they're all married, so they don't have my last name. But the point is, there's so much weight that we can leave to our sons with our name and respecting our name
Mhm.
and how we represent and take responsibility for our sons and the last name that's on the back of their jersey.
Mm. Yeah, and like the name means something, man. There's something behind that, right? And one thing that I've tried to do, and I do with all the guys that kind of part of our community is we think about like what are our family values, right? Like what
Mhm.
actually are they, and how do we reinforce those with our kids? So again, I'm a big like mantra person. We can kind of talk about all that kind of stuff if we want to dive into the weeds. But we kind of have a family motto, family saying, and like I say to my kids all the time, man. It's the camps are brave, the camps are kind, the camps are strong. They
Mhm.
have to do the right things. They do the hard things. They do the fun things. Like that's who we are. And it's just really cool to see that reinforced with them and them start to identify as that, like without me having to tell them like, hey, you're brave. Go be brave today. There's ways you can kind of pull that out of them to like get them to self-identify as that because
Mhm.
if you are not setting the value structure for your family and like setting the intention behind that, society will, right?
Yeah.
Like they're going to fill that gap of identity. And so like you need to be very intentional about creating that identity for them, not just creating it, but also reinforcing it and then giving them opportunities to prove that to themselves. Right. So I'm not just telling her she's brave, right? Like I need to give her the opportunities to prove to herself that she is that. Um,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, we do that in our house, man. It's been awesome. We keep it simple. We'll probably add on to it as they get older, but we're keeping it simple for now.
So I do something very, very similar with my boys. But you were saying, how is it that you get them to really buy into the part that they're brave?
Yeah, great question. Because it's one thing to just tell them that, like, this is who you
Hmm.
are, but it's another thing for them to actually believe that. And so, one, I think you can do your best you can just to reinforce it, right? Make sure they know that dad believes that I'm that. But a second thing is trying to bring that out of them, like in conversation. And a great time to do this if you got younger kids is like when you put them down to bed, right? Of like, hey, tell me one thing you did today that was brave, right? And so they'll have to like think like, what did I do today that was brave, and then just have a conversation with them about it, right? And they'll see like, cool, that was something that I did that was brave. And so that way they start to identify as it.
Hmm.
And then another thing that's really cool to see is them to identify with being brave without you even being like a part of the conversation or present. And then them to actually like see that like, yes, I am brave. So like I'll give you an example. We were down, I guess it was last year. We went on a family vacation and there was a little water park there. And it was like there was like a little kid section water park, and then there was like it wasn't like a adult water park, it was like a bigger kids water park. So it
Hmm.
had like kind of like a straight down slide, and not like a crazy one, but like kind of scary if you're 6 or 7. Um, and yeah, my kids wanted to go over there, and my oldest daughter saw the big straight down slide, and I could see she was kind of scared, and like I didn't want to push her to go down it. Like if she wants to do it, she can do it. If she doesn't, that's fine. But I was like, hey, are you going to go down every slide? She's like, I don't know, that one looks kind of scary. And like the only thing I said to her is just like, okay. I was like, well, who are you? She's like, I'm a camp. And I was like, okay. And that's all I said. And then like literally 20 minutes later, she like came running up and was like, I went down the slide. I'm brave. It's just like she proved
Yeah.
that she was that. It was like, it's so cool.
Yeah. She was like, Dad, challenge accepted.
Yeah. And I'm not going to tell her, like I
Hmm.
said, it doesn't matter to me if she does it or not. Like I know she's brave, but like to give her that chance to prove to herself without dad saying like, you must go do this.
Yeah. No, that I like that because
Do it. Yeah.
I feel like, we can have fathers out there who, maybe like prideful,
Mhm.
maybe also very insecure at the same time. And so they'll want to force their young kids into things that maybe they wouldn't have done, or maybe they still wouldn't do, which I don't think is ever a good thing. So
Mhm.
like I'm in the same boat as you. As I actually wouldn't could care less if my kids went down the slide. Like my son's in wrestling, and he has a meet next weekend, and it's like I don't care if he loses every one
Yeah.
0-10.
Mhm.
It's like he's getting out there. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really big too, just to like reinforce with your children that like you're proud of them for not the result, right? But
Mhm.
like their effort and intention going into it, any type of thing like
100%. I always am talking to them about the effort
that.
and versus just the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, the outcome's nice, right? Like if you get it,
Yeah, yeah,
right? But like, yeah, just go, I think it's kind of a different conversation than like a lot of parents that are just like, oh, well, just go do your best, like,
yeah.
no, like competition matters,
It
right? Like
does.
you want them to win, but like you don't tie, you don't tie your love and your like you being proud of them to a result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's 100% because when my son first started wrestling, he hated it. He hated it. And the reason he would tell me he hated it is because it was hard.
Hmm.
And so, kind of like you, how you would talk to them about how they're brave, I I would always talk to my sons and let them know that like we are warriors
Hmm.
and the lineage that we come from is warriors. I've told this story before, but so my biological dad, he's a Native American. The Indian reservation where his family is from, they are known as the aggressive tribe throughout history in that whole area. Bunch of assholes raiding everyone else's tribe type of thing. I mean, I love it. But so I would talk to them about that stuff, and then it's like, do you think when Dad goes to the gym that what I do is easy? Or I've competed in strongman competitions,
Hmm.
and it's like, do you think when you come and watch me that 550 pounds was easy? Well, yeah. It's like, no, 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 no. Just because it looked easy because I did it
Yeah.
doesn't mean it was easy. You can see like all the veins popping out of my head
Yeah.
if you like go back and watch the video, son.
Are you still doing strongman competitions?
Yeah, I got a couple coming up in the spring.
No kidding, really cool. I didn't know you did.
Yeah, yeah, I'm freaking. I love that the
Yeah.
strongman part because it's different.
Yeah.
It's not that.
It's just like, well, what are all the events too? Because it's like it's kind of raw. It's like, I mean, you gotta like pick up a giant boulder and like, is that what you're talking about? That type of
Oh
strongman?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah. So it's in every event they're different.
okay,
So like the last one I did, it was, what did we start off? It was a overhead log press, and then there was a 220-pound sandbag, run it down, pick up a 455 frame, run that down, and then you had to run back down to the start. And then there's like a 700-pound tire, flip it as many times as you could in X amount of time. And then there's the 550-pound yoke. You had to carry that 50 yards and then run and do power stairs, which was, I think, 250 pounds. So pick it up these giant stairs and carry it all the way up. And then there was a 230-pound stone that you had to pick up and over like a 5-foot bar as
yeah.
many times as you could.
Sounds brutal, man.
But then each event that you go, each strongman that you go to, all the events are always going to be different.
Okay, they vary it up. It's not just like, hey, it's these 4 events every time.
Nope, it'll be like 5 events, but sometimes there'll be 2 things that you'll do in it, or even 4 things. They'll have a like a square,
Okay,
this one to this one, this to this.
yeah,
It's cool. I got challenged to do it by a buddy at the gym,
yeah,
and then I just got hooked.
yeah. I can imagine that can be pretty addicting. To get
Hmm.
into something like that, especially like if it varies too, because then it's you're always having to like change up your modalities you're training for. It's
Hmm.
not just like,
Exactly.
yeah, it's not just like cool. I got to like do a 600-pound back squat, and that's like all I'm training for. It's
Yeah,
to be kind of jack of all trades.
yeah, it's cool. And then sometimes they'll do a mystery lift that you don't find out till the day of,
Hmm.
which just throws in another wrench. But anyways, my sons would come, and it's like they know that I get up at 0 dark 30 and go to the gym, and that just like I don't miss days.
Hmm.
So when I talk to them about like us being warriors, and I mean, my mom had me in boxing when I was 7 years old, It's like, do you want to box? Do you want some kid to punch you? Or do you want to wrestle? I want to wrestle. Over the years, he's actually come to love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I never tell him that he did bad. I don't try and sports coach him, sports dad.
Mm-hmm.
I just let him do his thing when he's there. After the next day of practice, sometimes we'll talk about it if he wants, and we'll go over things.
But
And
not on
now,
the
and
car ride on the way back.
never, we just never talk about it.
That was the
Car
worst.
ride.
That was the worst. When I had
Yeah.
like a 0 for 3 game in high school or something, or like travel ball.
Hmm.
Like we had like a long ride back. I was like, all right, let's hear it. As soon as I get in the car, tell me about that curveball.
Yeah. And then I feel like kids just dread it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My kids aren't like in super competitive sports yet.
Hmm.
My oldest is really into softball. She's 8, and like it's starting to get a little bit competitive at 8. Um, and she's improved quite a bit in the last couple of years. And I help coach and stuff like that. But like, yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience of like how I want to do things. And again, I love my dad, right? Like we have a great relationship,
Hmm.
but I'd like to do things differently. And one of them is around sports, right? And like what you're talking about is like I want my kids to 100% know that like what is important is how they show up and how they play the game.
Yeah.
If they win, great. If they lose, I don't care, right? But like you're going to show up, you're going to give it your best effort, and I'm not going to be that dad that's like, yeah, them dreading the ride home because of performance.
Hmm. Yeah. And another thing where I'm at with sports, because my son plays a lot of sports throughout the year. There was one time where he was in gymnastics, golf, wrestling, and flag football all at the same time. And again, it's easy for my family because my wife's stay at home mom. I work from home. My schedule is flexible. Um, Part of that working from home is just I work for myself, so it's not as crazy as it seems. But so many parents, some of these, it's like their kid has to be the best fucking 8-year-old on the field, and I'm like, man, I
Yeah,
don't
dude.
care if my
Like how many coaches I've got into it with, expect like we were in like 6 under softball league, right? And they're like, bitching about the umpires and like, trying to like cheat the system and stuff. And I was like, dude, like guys, they're 6, right?
Mhm.
Like, let's have a good time, Like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like I don't care if my kid's the best 8-year-old at anything. Like, I mean, I'd rather him be the best 20-year-old and the worst 8-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if I'm picking, that's what I'm picking. I could care less how good he is right now, because there's some kids in his wrestling at the gym he goes to. He goes to a year-round competition team
Mm,
who can mop the floor with him,
mm,
but he's liking it more and more every day, and I'm just like, it
yeah,
is what it is. He's his own person. He's not who I was at that same age.
yeah. At that age, like you just have like as long as they can learn the value of hard work, right?
Hmm.
They can learn the sport a little bit, and like actually start to understand the sport, and they show up and give their best effort. Man, that's a win.
Yeah, and he's one of those kids who he wants to win. He's very passionate. He's not aggressive though,
Mm,
but he wants to win, and he's like passionate.
yeah,
Like at flag football, and he did a mock wrestling meet, and he was like, "That was the most fun I've ever had at wrestling." I'm like, "Well, that's a good sign." Yeah, but he's not aggressive. It's like if I talk to him about like being mean, and it's not with the intent to hurt somebody,
hmm
it's with the intent to just like be aggressive and having that will to win. He's like, he's like mean. I can't be mean.
yeah. Is that
Like,
I'm curious too because you've got your boys are older than mine. Do you think that's something that can be developed, or do you think that's something that's just like you either kind of naturally have that aggressiveness or you don't?
I think it's both, but I think the aggressiveness. I think you can. I Here's my belief. I believe that we can program our kids to pretty much be however it is that we choose. Now, they'll have individual personalities, and we just have to mold and work around those. And he's not going to not be like a very respectful and just turn into this dog all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be more that he's that kid who like comes on the field, he's quiet, he's calm, cool, and have to, the programming part is getting him the ability to just turn it on now that he steps onto that field
Yeah.
versus that kid who's off the field who's just hooping and hollering. And maybe he's a really good athlete, but
Mm-hmm.
he's just hooping and hollering, and you're like, this guy's a dog just all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because like my older son, that's not his personality.
Mm-hmm.
My younger son, all the guys at wrestling, because he wrestles too, are like, in 2 years, this kid's gonna be winning state. Like he's 3, he's the youngest kid in here. He knows how to do takedown. He knows how to do the go behinds. He knows how to do this, and he's 3. But he's grown up in there, and he just watches, and he's very aggressive, and he wants to just wrestle anyone. He doesn't care your size, and he'll tell me if he loses, he'll just punch him in the face. And it's like, whoa, 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 bud, wrong sport, wrong sport. But it's like for him, I'm like already planning out. I'm gonna have to mold him to focus his energy on only positive things because it's like, and people will say like, ask if he's defiant. I'm like, he can be defiant with his mom, and that's where I got to come in. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't overpower defiance with like aggression
Mm-hmm.
or like authoritarian because that just like hypes up a defiant kid. Like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just push back even more. So like with him, because people will say he's one of those defiant, confident kids, it's like I'll explain it to him like I need you to use your super strength to help do these chores. Like I want to see how fast you can do, and use your super strength.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll be like, I got so much super strength that I can pick them all up with just 2 hands. And it's like, sweet, do it. Versus if I'm like, you have to do these chores because I said, because your mom said, then he's just going
Yeah.
to want to push back because that's what defiant kids do. It's
Mm-hmm.
why they're called defiant.
Mm-hmm.
And like my older son, because he's just, I used to, when my wife was pregnant, I literally prayed that he would be just like her because I was not the greatest of humans, let alone the person to be a husband and a father at the time. And he did. He turned out just so nice and uh, so curious of what everyone else wants to do, which my wife's like, why did you pray for him to be like me? Because she recognizes some flaws that she had as a youth. She
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do what other people were doing rather than be comfortable in her own skin doing what she thought was right. She did what the older kids did. Versus not me. I did not care what anyone thought of me, even when I was young. I was going on my path. Anyone want to follow me or not? It didn't matter. So she's like, you got to teach him how to do that because being a father you can end up in a lot of trouble doing early mistakes. So I guess the point is with both my boys, it's like trying to program them to both harness that energy, that defiant, that aggressive energy, and let them know that there is a place where you can unleash this, the wrestling mat, the football field, the chess board. I play checkers with all
Yeah.
my kids, and I'm teaching the older one chess. Like, kill your opponent in chess, but be the nicest, most gentlemanly person,
Yeah.
like the second it's over. And
Mm-hmm.
like trying to get my younger one because he wants to talk shit to all the kids at wrestling. He's like, okay, that's okay when you're in the gym. But when we're out here, like you're respectful, like you're nice, and trying to teach a 3-year-old that is like, he's like, huh, but this is fun. They laugh. Okay, and then also trying to teach an 8-year-old like you're not hurting the guy you're wrestling with out of being mean
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't like mean kids and he doesn't want to be mean to any of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has a cousin, I have a nephew who's 3 months older, who the kid has crazy anger problems. Like will just lose it and like it hurt like his siblings or try and hurt someone bad. And I'll have to tell him, you got to double leg his ass, put him down, because my son's a lot stronger than
Mm-hmm.
him. It's like, and a parent will come. And like, you shouldn't have to put that on an 8-year-old. But the first couple times I told him that, he's like, well, he's my friend. I don't want to hurt him. And again, that was a few years ago, but it's like now he understands like, okay, it's just so that he doesn't hurt somebody else. And it's like, but I want you to be the nicest, most respectful. He is so nice and he's sweet,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just trying to get that dog pulled out of him and like instill one in him.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think that can happen is because just of how like I grew up. I grew up playing sports, and I didn't have a dad who my dad could give an F if I ever played a day of sports. So he was never sports dad.
Mm-hmm.
When really I needed sports dad to focus
Mm-hmm.
because I was really good at sports. But the second I started getting to maybe like 14 and noticing girls, I would like skip practice to
Yeah.
go hang out with a girl. I would stop practicing during the week and still want to compete on the weekends. And my parents would take me. And I didn't have someone to hold me accountable. And then it was later in life, and not a lot later, but early, like 19, 18, when I realized I wasn't going to play football, I wasn't going to race motocross. It's like I need to do something. And I started getting to this fighting world again. It instilled in like this enjoy the suck hard work
Mm-hmm.
through practice and
Yeah.
like going to wrestling, going to jujitsu. I was training twice a day and I hated it because all growing up, I was that kid who was like, I just want to play. I don't want to practice. In football, high school, I was that kid who would jog in last
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to do any of the work. And then it's like, okay, I got to program myself and train my subconscious to enjoy the most sucky parts for potential one day glory, whatever that glory is. And it really changed me a lot trying to just focus on changing my subconscious to enjoy that suck. So it's like, I think we can change the subconscious of our kids to be able to balance those two things,
Mm-hmm.
like being gentlemen, because I'm sure you want your son to be a gentleman, but then there's going to be aspects where you're going to want your son to be able to be a savage.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to raise gentle men because it's just not a good man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that um, being dangerous and having it under control. Like that's what I'm trying to raise with both of them, and they're two personalities. You got to just attack it differently.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too to just kind of bring it back like full circle. Like you talk about kind of giving that outlet, to your boys, like to go be like that, to have that like masculine energy, testosterone, get out because like we all have that, and like we
Mm-hmm.
need to channel it, into something positive. Because if you don't, that's when it ends up, you're gonna channel that somewhere that's probably not good, right?
Yeah.
Because you have that energy. And what happens with a lot of guys now, they get older, they become adults, and like they stop doing those things, right? Like they stop going to the gym, or they've never done it before. And so all of this energy, this kind of masculine energy, is going to go to something that's negative, right? But if you have a positive outlet, and typically for men, for dads, that's like doing something hard physically, right? That is, hey, I'm going to go do a strongman, or I'm going to go train for a marathon, or I'm going to go hit the gym up, or do jujitsu, or whatever the case is. Like you need that, man. You really do. And then the other thing with that too is it's going to teach you really like the discipline factor, right? Which is going to help like everywhere in life.
Yeah. Because when I was young, I had zero discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I did. And it was like I was talented at a couple sports and I had no discipline instilled in me to pursue any of those things. So I don't want to live through my sons vicariously by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. I had my shot and I messed it up. But I'm going to let them be aware of like the roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And if they just want to be scientists and go to fucking Mars with Elon or something, it's like your mom ain't going to be happy about that. The going to Mars part, but go and be scientists.
Yeah.
Like, but it's still instilling that masculine, the masculinity in them, and it's us fathers who do that because mothers can't do that for boys.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of bringing it back of like the day starts when you're home from work,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure in your community, just like as in mine, there are men who we come across who've had almost they've been in the presence of masculinity energy, but they haven't actually had that masculine energy raise them. So once they become adult, it's like you almost want to tell them like, dude, the way you handle yourself, you kind of act like a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing wrong with women because that's how they're biologically programmed, but it's how you are acting, the way you're carrying yourself. when it comes to any adversity, when it comes to hard conversations, like, um, so it just falls on us men to raise our children and not put that on women once the children are a certain age,
Mm-hmm.
because women are the most important thing in the world to a newborn infant to the time they're like 6, 7. Like boys, girls, they need their mothers more than they need us. We're useless, except to when they're like 2 and 3, throw them on the bed,
Mm-hmm.
and they have fun. We toss them.
Yeah.
Other than that, the other 85-90% of the time, they could care less about us. But then there's this transition time,
Mm-hmm.
6, 7, 8, where it's like we need to pull them from their mothers, reel them into us, and then we gotta, whether it's your daughters, demonstrate how it is that they're
Mm-hmm.
taken care of. Men demonstrate on how it is that they're supposed to be,
Yeah.
because culturally we just put it on our wives, which our wives don't need more work,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't need to set up our sons for failure by just going, hey, our wives can do that. Your mom, go talk to your mom. The mom's doing the disciplining, which is discipleship. You know, he's talking back. The mom's having to yell at him,
Mm-hmm.
and then we only come in when like they call us. Like I don't allow my wife to like do any of those things. I'm like, the second he's out of line, you can just tell him, go talk to me or just call me. Like, or if I even hear anything going on, it's like the 8-year-old, he's mine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
at first she didn't get it,
Mm-hmm.
because the mothers don't want to let go of their children.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like once it's like explained, and even in biblical context, it's like the Jews worked from sun up to sundown. And then it literally says that they are to raise their offspring.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what we're saying, it starts
Yeah.
after work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's this quote. I forget who said it, but it's, moms turn babies into boys, and then dads turn boys into men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like right where we're getting to with my kid right now is my son. He'll be 3 in March, and like we're having to start doing like the disciplining thing a little bit because he's wild, man. He's out of control. Um,
That's awesome. I can imagine. And it's like, that's
Yeah, I
awesome.
mean, he's like he's just a ball of testosterone. Like he runs around, he'll just like run around and just like smack his sister, like not even thinking about it, just like running, just like hitting everything, And so we're having to start that, and it's way different with him than it was with my girls, too, right? And like I would discipline my daughter as well, but a lot of that comes to my wife too, discipline our girls, because ultimately, she is trying to be the example that that they want to become, right? But yeah, it's way different, man. With boys and girls, like my daughters, it's a fine, delicate balance between me wanting to ensure that they know that they are protected, they are loved, like daddy's got them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of that coin is you're out of the house at some point in time, and you need to be able to go out there and have discernment, make the best decisions, and feel like you've got this right, and like I've set you up for success because I'm not always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a delicate balance with girls, man. It really is. Like half the time you want to just like hold them, squeeze them, like daddy's got you. I want anything bad happen to you ever. But then like
Yeah.
the other
I'll
half,
kill him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But like the other half is like, you know what? Like when she's in college, if she wants to go to college and she's at a party, like I'm not going to be there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like she has to make that decision for herself. Of like what the right thing to do is. So it's trying to put those opportunities out there for them to develop themselves as well.
No, I agree. In creating, or not creating, because I believe every child is born with confidence, and it's us as parents who squander their confidence away. But it's to continue to encourage their confidence, because unconfident women are will say yes to any man who gives them the attention that they want,
Mm-hmm.
and become people pleasers. And I
Yeah,
mean, you were in college, so I'm sure you saw women who are people pleasers, and it doesn't go good for them at the end of the day.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're not the ones who are just getting wifed up.
Yeah. No, it's tough, man. Again, because like you want to protect them for sure, but like you have to give
Hmm.
them opportunities to develop that confidence themselves and like fall on their face, and like you'll be there to help pick them up, but like they've got to pick themselves up too. And with my girls especially, I try to be really intentional about it. I'm not the perfect dad, even though like I try to be. I'm definitely not. I fail a lot, but it is trying to develop that sense of self worth and self confidence in them.
Hmm.
And like
Yeah.
one like my middle daughter, she's very artistic. She's very creative. Like she loves art. She loves drawing, painting, music, all kinds of stuff. And she's just drawing constantly, like all the time. And she will come up when she was little. She would come up to us with drawings and be like, "Hey, what do you think? Like, do you like this?" And like your instant reaction as a dad is just be like, "Oh, I love it. It's so good."
Hmm.
But like, what are you doing subconsciously to her when you say that?
Yeah.
It's like, well, she's going to seek your validation on
Yeah.
things. And so you have to kind of like think. You just have to like give like this. What's the second order effect of what I'm doing? And so like we tried to change the way we approach that. So like our first reaction to that is not like, oh, I love it. It's like, hey, what do you think of it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you proud of it?
Hmm.
And then if she's proud of it, like, I love it. Like, yeah, if you love it, I love it.
Yeah. No, it's same thing. That's the one question that I'll ask my son about his wrestling, and
Yeah.
he'll be like, "How do you think I did?" And it's like, "Well, how do you think you did?" And he'll be like, "I think I did like a 9 out of 10." All right, then that's awesome. So you're proud of that? And he'll be like, "I'm proud of that." It's like, well, then I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because um, yeah, I was right on the same page with you about us causing them to want to seek validation if
Mm-hmm.
all we're doing is praising.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very American thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go to other European countries or South American countries, like they don't praise kids like we do in the United States. We make kids literally the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Culturally in the United States, I'm sure you could survey 100 couples that you know, and I bet you a majority would say that they love their kids more than their spouse. They might not say that in front of their spouse,
Mm-hmm.
but if they were being honest, they would say that.
Yeah.
Which, what does that do to set them up for the future?
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell my kids, I love your mom more than I love you. I
Yeah.
love Jesus, then your mom, and then you guys.
Yeah.
And you guys will understand, and you'll thank me for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I tell. I mean, I tell my kids, your mom is my first baby, right? I said she was there before you guys were.
Hmm.
But like I love you, absolutely. But like when it comes to order, same thing. It's like mom's my first baby. Like then you guys.
Yeah, it's it's good for them though.
Mm.
So I guess what is the end goal with Epic Dad?
Yeah, so I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the business. So I started about 3 years ago, and I've got like a marketing physical products background, and so I launched the company as a supplement brand. So we make supplements. We make all 100% natural supplements to help dads get in the gym, to get in shape, to get fit. But our ultimate mission with the company is to change the culture by creating better dads. And so because our mission's really broad, like we've gotten a lot of buy-in around that and like created this really cool culture community. Um,
Hmm.
and that's what kind of started the podcast was like, hey, guys are asking about all this information. We want to give good content. Like, honestly, like I don't really care if anyone ever buys a supplement from us or not. Like it'd be great if you did, right? I mean, it helps the company, but like ultimately we want you to be a better dad.
Yeah.
And so because of that, like that's why we create a lot of content. We've got the podcast. And then we about 6 months ago we launched our first online fitness program to help dads kind of on a more one-on-one basis, and that's been really cool. We've got this is kind of hush hush a little bit. When's this coming out? Do you know? I don't know if I want to say anything.
When do you want it to come out?
Let's say if it comes out after January 1st, we should be good. Um,
I can do that.
Okay, so by the time you're hearing this, hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll have our official Epic Dad app up and
Oh,
running too.
cool.
And so we'll have fitness programming, content, things like that on there too, just to kind of like give like a like that's our platform. Like where do you
Hmm.
want to go? Like maybe you don't need supplements, but like you need accountability or you need like habit tracking or whatever. So we'll kind of have that app. But like at the end of the day, like where I'd like it to go is I would like it to be the number one supplement company for dads. So if you're that dad that looks in the mirror, and you're like, damn, dude, like what happened? Right. And like you're ready to make that change. Like there's just no question that we're going to be there to support you on that journey. Whether it's with supplements, whether it's with content, and courses and resources, whether it's with, fitness programming, like whatever it is. Like we just want to be the number one resource for dads out there.
Dude, I didn't even know you guys had supplements. I'm gonna look that up right now.
Yeah, brother, that's what I'm drinking, man. I'm drinking our pre-workout. It's all natural. It's the best one in the market. Like I'm biased, but it's stacked, man. It's clinically dosed. It's all natural, no artificials. It's got 5 grams creatine in it. It's awesome, dude.
Um,
That's our flagship for sure. No, it's crazy. It's
what's the
crazy.
website?
Just the epicdad.com.
Okay, because I found another one that was in a different country.
That's not us. Yeah, the epicdad.com. But yeah, man, we started as a supplement company, and then it's funny, like the Epidad Fit, which I'm sure that's where we connected on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's fairly new, so that's just within the past 6 months. Our fitness programming, things like that. We've kind of gone down that route and grown really really quickly on it. But kind of the core backbone of the business has been around supplements.
So you guys have the pre-workout, the bone broth,
Yeah, yeah,
the multivitamin, and then your
yep,
stack.
yep, yeah. So we got 3 in
Okay.
the market right now.
I like your branding.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just to give you a sense too. Like we've grown quite a bit. The last two. I guess we officially launched our pre workout like 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we've grown a ton. But we're to the point now where I would like to do kind of just like a really good line structure review and make sure like our plan for 25 really makes sense from a branding perspective. In a sort of perspective, like we've got everything we need to touch. So we'll have probably 3 or 4 more launch next year just to round out the assortment. So things in the pipeline is I'll just say this: everything that we launch is intended to solve a specific pain point for a dad.
Yeah.
So that's why our pre-workout was our first one. It's our flagship because the number one thing you need to do is go do physical activity,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's like step one to becoming a better human being and like a better father. So we created that to help you get some motivation, right? To get started. Like I drink it every single morning, right? Like it's my go-to. Yeah, I mean, do you need a pre-workout? Like, no, you don't need one, but like it sure fuck helps when it's like 4:30 in the morning, and you got to get your workout in, right? So like that's why we created that, and we created it. All of our stuff is 100% natural ingredients. As I started to go down the supplement space and really research, I was just shocked. I've always been a supplement user,
Mm-hmm.
but I was just shocked, man. I was like, oh crap, like that bottle of $20 pre-workout I pick up at Walmart is just like ridiculously bad for me.
Yeah.
As we launched this brand and wanted to make sure that like we're helping dads, like we obviously want to make sure it's good ingredients too.
Yeah. You don't want a good old dose of Red 40 in your pre-workout?
Right? Yeah. Ridiculous, man. Like all the crap that's on the shelves. Um, so our goal with that is to like be, the premium number one supplement company for dads. So we launched that pre-workout like to help you get in the gym. And then we launched the post-workout as a protein that is a natural protein, just to help you build lean muscle mass as you start to get back in the gym. So there's a lot of great proteins out there, but the problem with most proteins, especially from a whey side, is fillers, right?
Yeah.
And so if you just pick up like your norm, I'm not going to name any brands. I could, but I won't. But if you just pick up, a brand off the shelf at like Walmart or Costco or whatever, it's probably decent, whey protein. But at the end of the day, it's probably only around 60 to 75% protein content, and the rest
Mm-hmm.
junk, just fillers in there. And so with ours, our Paleo Post Whey, it's a beef isolate protein bone broth. It's 97% protein content. versus what you get traditionally with whey between 60 and 75%. So it's just like slam packed pure with protein. And additionally, you get the added benefit of collagen peptides as well because it's beef isolate.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a stacked post workout. We will launch a whey at some point in time next year. We'll launch like a natural like grass fed whey. But we wanted to launch with the beef first, and then we've got just an absolutely stacked multivitamin. As you think about, most dads are their diets aren't the greatest, and so they may be trying to track from a macronutrient perspective, but from a micronutrient perspective, they're way off. So we're looking to fill the gap there too. And then so as we look to the future of what we're going to launch, don't have a date on it yet, but we will have a sleep aid, a natural sleep aid, because a lot of dads that are busy aren't getting a lot of sleep, and that may not change. You may not get a lot of sleep, but like the sleep that you do get needs to be effective, like REM cycle sleep, right? And so
Hmm.
we'll launch one to help with that. We'll launch a natural nootropic as well, energy blend to help with the office. So you can focus on your work. So when it is 5 o'clock, you can shut it down and go be a dad. And then, like I said, we've got 3 or 4 kind of in the pipeline.
Nice, man. Well, is there anything else you want to say about like your program or anything?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. So we launched, it's called Epic Dad Fit, which is kind of our premier, online fitness program, specifically for dads. Like we have people reach out all the time. Like, can I come in? Like, are you a dad? They're like, no. I'm like, no, you cannot come in. Like it's just for dads. And, the way it works is, we operate on 3 pillars. And 2 of them are very important. One of them is not important. The 2 of them that are important is mindset and community and accountability. And so, we all like you can look at my website right now. We offer free plans, like free workout plans, right? So it's not about the plan that you're on. It's about one changing your mindset, so that you will actually follow through on the plan, right? And you will have you'll set up what we do is we take guys through what's called our Epic Dad framework, which is
Hmm.
6 pillars. Inside the program, we hold you accountable the first 2. So we hold you accountable completing what's called your identity statement, which is at the end of the day, what's going to be on your tombstone, right? Like that's what's actually important to you. And so we craft a statement, and that becomes one of your daily habits. Is you're going to connect with that identity statement in the morning before your family wakes up. So you set the intention for the day. So that's 1. 2 is your values. We already talked about values, but we help guys get very, very clear, and hold themselves accountable to their personal values and then also family values. And so by doing those 2 things, what that's doing is that's kind of rewiring your brain, right? Because
Hmm.
I could give you the perfect plan and you may get on it for a week, and feel all motivated, but like that motivation is going to fade, right? And so we've got to fundamentally rewire what's going on in your brain so you can be successful. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's number 1. And then, like I said, the plan is just the X's and O's. Like we help guys work out, we help with nutrition, stuff like that, right? To get the results. But that part's honestly, it just happens. And then the third thing is community accountability. And so that's something that we built that's just absolutely incredible, for the guys that are inside. And so, we help hold them accountable. We've got all kinds of really cool stuff, around habit tracking and things like that, to help push guys. So yeah, man, it's awesome. It's still relatively new, but it's grown like a freaking rocket ship, which is crazy. Super cool. Guys are getting awesome value from it, and like legitimately changing like their family tree. It's awesome.
No, that is good. And I think all men need to be in some part of a community.
Mhm.
I think that's so
Yeah,
important.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we, up until probably, 60, 70 years ago, like that's just how men operated, right? Like
Yeah.
in communities and tribes. And so many men, especially fathers these days, are just on an island by themselves, and so
Hmm.
we've kind of created that for guys, to define that tribe, find that community, to help them live up to the man they want to become, right? Because we all know who we want to become. And so we kind of raise that standard for guys and hold them accountable to it.
Nice. Well, Drew, I'm actually going to hit stop.